All right, so let's dive into a word I think we've all encountered at some point.
Okay.
That word is conservative.
Right.
It gets thrown around a lot, you know.
Yeah.
But do we actually know what it means?
Hmm.
It's one of those labels that seems pretty straightforward, that has like a ton of nuance underneath.
Yeah, it's true. Conservative is not a monolith. It's more like a family, with like a shared history.
Uh-huh.
But some pretty distinct branches.
Okay. Family drama, but political style.
Exactly.
I'm intrigued. I'm ready to learn more.
Yeah.
So today we are doing a deep dive into the different types of conservatism in the U.S.
Okay.
And I'm already sensing that this is going to be way more interesting than just like a dictionary definition.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going beyond the surface
Okay.
to like explore the origins and the big names,
Okay.
the core beliefs that set these groups apart.
Got it.
So it's like getting a backstage pass to how American politics really works.
I love that.
Yeah.
So before we meet the family members, so to speak, what's the common thread? What's the foundation of conservatism in general?
So at its core, conservatism kind of emphasizes preserving those established institutions and values.
Okay.
There's a skepticism of like rapid change and then a preference for smaller role of government in people's lives.
Okay. So a focus on tradition.
Yeah.
Limited government.
Uh-huh.
That's our starting point.
Right.
But as you said, it gets way more complex than that.
Absolutely.
So let's start unpacking these different types of conservatives, shall we? Where should we begin?
Well, no exploration of conservatism would be complete without starting with the traditionalists.
Okay.
These are the folks who embody that classic, almost Reagan-era vision of conservatism.
Yes, the Morning in America conservatives.
Exactly.
I see it.
They're all about individual responsibility, fiscal discipline, think balanced budgets,
Uh-huh.
and a strict interpretation of the Constitution.
So when people talk about fiscal responsibility, what does that actually mean in practice?
It means being careful with government spending, avoiding deficits, and prioritizing a balanced budget.
Okay.
Think of it as running the government like a household.
Okay.
Don't spend more than you take in.
Makes sense.
This is a core principle for traditional conservatives, often advocated by groups like the Heritage Foundation
Okay.
and publications like the National Review.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
they're the watchdogs of government spending.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So who's next on our conservative family tree?
Next, we have the social conservatives,
Okay.
a group deeply concerned with traditional values and morality.
Okay. So we're shifting from economic principles to more social and cultural territory.
Exactly. For social conservatives, issues like abortion, LGBTQ plus rights,
Okay.
and the role of religion in public life,
Yeah.
those take center stage.
I see.
They often advocate for policies based on their understanding of traditional family structures and religious teachings.
So this is where the term culture wars comes into play, right?
Yeah.
It's like a battle over values.
That's right.
And how society should be shaped.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The culture wars refer to these clashes over social and cultural issues.
Okay.
Social conservatives played a major role in the moral majority movement.
Okay.
And figures like Jerry Falwell and Mike Pence
Uh-huh.
are prominent examples of this worldview.
I see.
Their aim is to influence legislation and public policy to reflect their values.
Got it. So they're fighting for their vision of a moral society.
Exactly.
All right, this conservative family is proving to be pretty diverse.
It is.
Who else is in the mix?
Now let's talk about the neoconservatives,
Okay.
a group that's particularly interesting because they didn't start out as conservatives at all.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So they're like the converts of the conservative world.
You could say that many neoconservatives began as liberals,
Wow.
but became disillusioned with what they perceived as the failures of liberal policies, especially in foreign policy.
Okay, what caused this shift?
So think back to the Vietnam War era,
Okay.
a time when many liberals began questioning the effectiveness of American intervention abroad.
Yeah.
Some felt that liberalism had become too pacifist
Okay.
and wasn't adequately addressing threats to democracy around the world.
Interesting.
This disillusionment led some to embrace a more hawkish foreign policy,
Okay.
which aligned more with conservative thinking at the time.
Interesting. So they shifted from one end of the political spectrum to the other.
Yes, and they brought a distinct set of beliefs with them.
Uh-huh.
Neoconservatives believe in actively promoting democracy and American values around the world,
Okay.
often through military strength and intervention.
Okay.
Think figures like Dick Cheney and the decision to invade Iraq.
So they're the interventionists of the conservative movement.
Exactly. They believe in a strong national defense, maintaining alliances like NATO, and using American power to shape the global order.
Yeah.
They see this as a moral imperative, not just a matter of strategic interest.
Okay, we're seeing a real range of thought here.
From fiscal hawks to cultural warriors to global interventionists.
Exactly.
This is proving to be more than just a quick overview of conservatism.
Yeah.
Who's next on our list?
Now let's move on to a group that emphasizes individual liberty above all else.
Okay.
The Libertarian Conservatives.
Ah, yes, the don't tread on me crowd.
Exactly.
I'm guessing they're the ones most wary of government power.
Exactly. Libertarian Conservatives prioritize minimal government intervention in both the economy and personal lives. They're the champions of free markets, individual freedom, limited regulation. I think Rand Paul is a prime example.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're the ones pushing back against things like mass surveillance.
Yeah.
And what they see as government overreach.
Absolutely. They believe in maximizing individual autonomy.
Okay.
And minimizing the role of the state. This extends to their economic views with a strong emphasis on free markets deregulation.
Okay.
And things like cryptocurrency.
Which they see as a way to bypass government control.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 4 distinct branches of this conservative family tree so far.
Right.
Who's the final member of our conservative quintet?
Last, but certainly not least, we have the MAGA Republicans.
Okay.
A group that's reshaped the landscape of American conservatism in recent years.
Yes. The rise of the MAGA movement has definitely shaken things up.
Absolutely closely associated with Donald Trump. This group emphasizes a populist, America First approach that challenges some traditional conservative principles.
Okay, so populism, what does that actually mean in this context?
Populism in this sense is about appealing directly to the concerns and anxieties of ordinary people, often framing politics as a battle between the elite and the people.
Got it.
MAGA Republicans tap into a sense of grievance among some working-class voters who feel left behind by globalization and cultural changes.
So they're the ones who are skeptical of globalism and want to restrict immigration, seeing it as a threat to American jobs and culture.
Yes, and they often clash with the traditional Republican establishment on issues like trade, where they favor protectionist policies like tariffs. Think Marjorie Taylor Greene as a vocal representative of this group. They're also deeply engaged in the culture wars, pushing back against what they see as a progressive agenda that threatens traditional values.
All right, so we've met the 5 main players in the world of American conservatism.
We have.
It's fascinating how diverse they are, each with their own priorities and approaches. But I'm guessing there's some overlap, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And probably some major points of tension, too.
You're absolutely right, and that's what makes understanding these different types of conservatives so crucial. It's not a simple black and white picture. There are shades of gray areas of agreement and some pretty explosive clashes.
Okay, this deep dive is already proving to be much more than just a surface-level exploration. Absolutely.
I'm hooked.
Good.
Let's unpack these points of overlap and conflict in our next segment.
Sounds good.
Listeners, stay tuned, because this is where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
All right, we are back and ready to unpack this complex world of American conservatism even further. We've met the main players: traditionalists, social conservatives, neoconservatives, libertarian conservatives, and MAGA Republicans. It's like a political drama unfolding, right?
It is.
With all these different factions trying to steer the Republican Party and the country in their preferred direction.
It is a fascinating dynamic.
Right.
You have these groups that share some core values. Like a belief in limited government and individual responsibility. But their visions for how to achieve those goals can be wildly different.
Exactly. So it's not just a matter of conservative versus liberal anymore. It's about understanding the internal debates and tensions within conservatism itself. Absolutely.
So where do we see this internal struggle playing out most vividly?
One of the most compelling arenas is the Republican primary. It's like a battle for the soul of the party, with candidates trying to appeal to different segments of the conservative base. Some try to bridge the gaps, while others double down on their specific niche, hoping to energize a particular faction.
It sounds like a high-stakes balancing act.
It is.
They need to appeal to their base without alienating potential voters from other conservative camps?
Precisely. It's a delicate dance.
Right.
And it often leads to some pretty surprising alliances and unexpected policy positions.
Really?
Yeah. For example, you might see a candidate who is fiscally conservative but socially moderate.
Okay.
Trying to appeal to both traditionalists and libertarian conservatives. Or you might see a candidate who leans heavily into the culture wars,
right,
hoping to galvanize social conservatives and MAGA Republicans.
So it's a reminder that political labels can be misleading. There's so much more nuance beneath the surface.
Absolutely.
So how do these different factions influence policy debates on concrete issues?
Right.
Let's start with immigration.
Okay.
It's been a hot-button issue for years.
Immigration is a perfect example of how these different conservative factions clash.
Okay.
You have MAGA Republicans pushing for stricter border control and limits on immigration, often framing it as an economic and cultural threat,
right,
appealing to those anxieties we discussed earlier.
Right, that America First rhetoric resonates with their base.
Yeah.
Tapping into concerns about job security and preserving a certain vision of American culture.
Right.
But where do the other groups stand?
Right.
Do they agree with this approach?
Not necessarily. Libertarian conservatives, for instance, generally favor more open immigration policies. They argue that it benefits the economy by providing a larger workforce and aligns with their principles of individual liberty. People should be free to move and seek opportunities wherever they choose.
So we have two fundamentally different perspectives on immigration within the conservative movement.
Yes.
What about the other groups? Where do they fall on this spectrum?
Social conservatives often view immigration through a different lens.
Okay.
While they might not necessarily oppose immigration outright, they often emphasize assimilation into what they consider traditional American culture. They might support policies that promote English language acquisition or emphasize adherence to what they view as traditional American values.
It's amazing how one issue can be viewed through so many different lenses, even within the same political party.
It's true.
It's a reminder that we need to go beyond those simple labels to understand the complexity of these debates.
Absolutely.
What about climate change? That's another issue where there's a lot of disagreement, even within the conservative movement.
Climate change is a fascinating case study.
Okay.
You have many traditional conservatives and MAGA Republicans who are skeptical of climate science or downplay the urgency of addressing it.
Okay.
Their concern often centers on the economic impact of environmental regulations, arguing that they stifle growth and hurt businesses.
Right. They often frame it as a choice between economic prosperity and environmental protection.
Exactly.
But do all conservatives share that view?
Not at all.
Okay.
You have some conservatives, particularly those with libertarian leanings, who acknowledge climate change as a real issue, but favor market-based solutions over government intervention. They might support things like carbon taxes or emissions trading schemes, believing that the free market is more efficient at driving innovation and finding solutions than government mandates.
So instead of top-down regulations, they believe in using market forces to incentivize businesses to reduce their carbon footprint.
Right.
Interesting. Are there any conservatives who advocate for more traditional government action on climate change?
Yes, there's a smaller but growing contingent of conservatives who see climate change as a moral imperative, urging more robust government action to address it. They argue that it's a matter of intergenerational justice, that we have a responsibility to protect the planet for future generations. This group often frames climate action as a matter of conservation, aligning it with traditional conservative values of stewardship and responsibility.
So even on an issue like climate change, which has become increasingly polarized, you see a spectrum of viewpoints within conservatism.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that these aren't monolithic blocks.
Right.
What about foreign policy? That's always a big one, especially with the different views on America's role in the world.
Foreign policy is another area where these fault lines within conservatism become very clear. You have the neoconservatives who advocate for a strong military presence around the world. And are more willing to intervene in foreign conflicts, believing that America has a responsibility to promote democracy and freedom abroad.
So they see America as a global leader, a force for good in the world.
Exactly.
Willing to use its power to shape events.
Exactly. But then you have libertarian conservatives.
Okay.
Who are generally more isolationist.
Okay.
Favoring a non-interventionist approach. And focusing on domestic issues.
Got it.
They're wary of getting entangled in foreign conflicts.
Okay.
Arguing that military intervention often does more harm than good.
Yeah.
And drains resources that could be used at home.
So a clash between a more activist foreign policy and a more restrained one.
Yeah.
Both coming from within the conservative movement.
Exactly.
What about the MAGA Republicans? Where do they fit into this debate?
MAGA Republicans take a more transactional approach to foreign policy.
Okay.
Prioritizing what they see as America's economic and strategic interests above all else. They're skeptical of multilateral agreements.
Okay.
And often advocate for renegotiating trade deals and military alliances to ensure that America is getting the best possible deal.
So a focus on America first, even if it means shaking up the established world order.
Yeah.
This seems to be a recurring theme with the MAGA Republicans.
It is.
A willingness to challenge traditional norms and institutions.
Absolutely. And it's this willingness to disrupt the status quo.
Yeah.
That makes them such a powerful force within the Republican Party, even if it creates friction with other conservative groups.
Okay.
It's important to remember that these different factions aren't operating in isolation. There are coalitions that form compromises that are made.
Right.
And shifting alliances depending on the specific issue at hand.
So it's a constantly evolving landscape.
It is.
With these different groups vying for influence.
Yeah.
And trying to shape the direction of the party in the country.
Exactly. And that's what makes following American politics so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle where the pieces are constantly being rearranged, and we're trying to figure out what the final picture looks like. Understanding the different types of conservatives is like having a cheat sheet.
Right.
To help solve that puzzle.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've explored the common ground and points of tension between these different conservative groups. And we've seen how these internal debates play out on major policy issues. But there's one more crucial piece to this puzzle that we need to explore. The role of these different conservative groups in shaping the future of the Republican Party.
Okay.
Listeners, buckle up because things are about to get even more interesting. Okay, so we're back.
Yeah.
For the final part of our deep dive into the world of American conservatism.
We've left you with a big question to ponder.
Right. Which type of conservatism will ultimately shape the future of the Republican Party?
It's a question with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to explore the possibilities.
Because as we've seen, the Republican Party is at a crossroads.
Yeah, absolutely. The rise of the MAGA Republicans has introduced this new dynamic, challenging those traditional power structures and ideological assumptions.
So let's play a little game of political fortune teller.
Okay, game.
What scenarios do you see unfolding?
Right.
Well, one possibility is that the Republican Party undergoes a sort of realignment, shifting its center of gravity towards the MAGA wing.
That would be a significant shift.
Right. It would mean a more populist, nationalist, and culturally focused Republican Party.
Which would likely entail a departure from some traditional conservative principles like free trade.
Yeah.
And a more restrained foreign policy.
That's right. We've already seen those tensions playing out on issues like immigration and trade.
Absolutely. A MAGA-dominated Republican Party would likely double down on those positions, prioritizing what they see as the interests of American workers.
That's it.
And challenging globalist institutions.
It would be a bold departure from the Republican Party of, say, Ronald Reagan.
Absolutely. But it's the scenario that's gaining traction, especially among younger voters, who are drawn to the MAGA movement's energy and its willingness to challenge the status quo.
Okay, so that's one possibility, a MAGA takeover, so to speak.
Right.
What other scenarios are on your political radar?
Another possibility is that the Republican Party manages to find some sort of uneasy truce between its different factions.
So a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
Trying to keep everyone relatively happy.
Right.
Without alienating any particular group.
Exactly. This would likely involve a focus on those core areas of agreement, like limited government and individual responsibility, while downplaying some of the more divisive issues like immigration and social policy.
It would require a lot of compromise.
Yeah.
And a willingness to put aside some deeply held beliefs.
It would indeed, but it's not unprecedented. Parties evolve over time.
That's true.
Adapting to changing political realities and shifting demographics.
So a more pragmatic, less ideologically driven Republican Party, trying to appeal to a broader coalition of voters.
That's one way to put it. It would be a Republican Party that's less about purity tests and more about finding common ground on practical solutions to the challenges facing the country.
But is that even possible in today's hyper-partisan climate? It seems like everyone is digging in their heels, unwilling to budge an inch.
It's a tough question, and there's no guarantee of success.
Yeah, political compromise seems like a lost art these days.
It does. But there are historical examples of parties successfully navigating similar internal divisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's face it, neither the MAGA wing nor the traditional conservatives want to see the Republican Party fall apart completely.
That's true. A fractured party would benefit no one.
Right.
Least of all the conservatives themselves.
Okay, so we've got the MAGA takeover scenario.
Right.
And the uneasy truce scenario.
Yep.
Any other possibilities on your political crystal ball?
There's always the wild card scenario. Yeah. The one that nobody sees coming.
Ooh, I like a good wild card.
Right.
Give me an example.
Well, imagine a charismatic young political figure emerges. Someone who can bridge the divides within the Republican Party.
Okay.
And articulate a fresh vision for American conservatism.
So a unifier.
Yeah.
Someone who can appeal to both the MAGA base and the more traditional conservatives.
Exactly. Someone who can tap into the energy and populism of the MAGA movement.
Yeah.
While also respecting those core principles of limited government and individual responsibility.
It would take a truly remarkable individual to pull that off.
It would indeed. But politics is full of surprises.
That is true.
Right.
Okay, so we've explored 3 potential scenarios for the future of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
The MAGA takeover, the uneasy truce, and the wild card unifier.
And of course, there are countless other possibilities, variations on these themes and unforeseen events that could reshape the political landscape entirely.
But these scenarios highlight the stakes of this internal struggle within the Republican Party.
Absolutely. It's not just about who controls the party.
Right.
It's about the direction of the country.
Because, as we've discussed throughout this deep dive, these different types of conservatism have very different visions for America's future.
They do.
They have different priorities, different values, and different approaches to solving problems.
It's true.
So as we wrap up this exploration of American conservatism, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay, I like that.
A challenge to think critically about your own political beliefs.
To examine where you fall on the spectrum of conservative thought.
Yeah.
And to consider what kind of future you want for America.
Because ultimately, the future of conservatism isn't just up to politicians.
It's up to all of us.
That's right. So engage in those thoughtful discussions, listen to diverse perspectives, and be an active participant in shaping the political landscape.
Don't just accept the labels and the talking points.
Yeah.
Dig deeper, question your assumptions, and be open to new ideas.
Because the choices we make today will determine the course of American politics for years to come.
That's right. This has been The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of conservatism in America.
And until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.